Africa Day, also known as the African Unity Day, is celebrated annually on the 25th of May. It commemorates the founding of the Organization of African Unity, or OAU. Ghana's founding father, Kwameh Nkurumah, who played a critical role in the formation of this Pan-African organization, was a firm believer in African unity.
This decade is the decade of African independence. Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Today, a program that gives you an incisive analysis of events taking place in Africa. Now this week, we are focusing on the current state of the African continent, 58 years after the formation of the Organization of African Unity, the precursor to the African Union. We shall review some of the major challenges facing the continent and what the future prospects hold for this great and rising continent. And don't forget to send us your comments on this show and on our previous shows. As you watch, stay with us.
Africa Day 2021. On 25th of May 1963, Africa made history with the foundation of the Organization of African Unity, or the OAU. Africa Day is commemorated on the occasion of this great day to celebrate and acknowledge the successes of the Organization of African Unity, and now the African Union, in the fight against colonialism and apartheid. During this day, Africans also celebrate the progress that Africa has made while reflecting upon the common challenges that the continent faces in a global environment. In July 1999, during an extraordinary summit in Sirte, the OAU decided to set up a new organization to replace it. The African Union, officially launched at the Durban Summit in 2002, was tasked with accelerating and deepening the process of economic and political integration of the continent.
Speaking during the event, the then South African President Thabo Mbeki pledged that African leaders will honor commitments made during the establishment of the African Union.
We have convened at this stadium in Durban in the South African province of KwaZulu-Natal to make a pledge to the peoples of Africa and the world that we will honor the commitments we made as we agreed to establish the African Union. As a South African, I am proud that Africa is taking the giant step forward that she is taking today.
Well, so what's the state of Africa today? And have African leaders lived up to their commitments to serve the people? Now, to discuss the current state of the African continent, we are joined by Firoz Manji, a professor of African Studies at Carleton University in Canada. He's also a publisher at Daraja Press. Welcome, Professor Manji.
Pleasure.
Also here with us today is Macharia Monene, a United Nations expert on decolonization and a professor of history and international relations at the United States International University in Nairobi. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
Now let's start off with Professor Manji. It's quite obvious that the COVID-19 pandemic will be on top of the African Union agenda this year due to its impact on the lives of hundreds of millions across the continent. Now, what is the African Union doing to mitigate this crisis, especially through the availability of vaccines?
Well, I'm afraid the balance sheet is too little, too late. And they have declared plans for enabling Africa to be able to manufacture its own vaccines. But this is a plan which won't be in effect until another 20 years from now. All of this could have been done many years ago. We simply don't have the capacity to produce vaccines, in spite of the intellectual talent that exists in Africa. I think one of the most disappointing things about it all is that the very small number of vaccinations that have already been given have largely been given to the elite, to the members of the elite and the middle classes.
Thank you, Professor Manji of Daraja Press.
The African Union is playing a central role in managing continental efforts to limit the health and economic impact of COVID-19. However, the availability of COVID-19 vaccines for Africa is a major challenge given the region's disproportionately low rate of vaccinations. Dr. John Nkengasong, director at the AU's Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has warned that any delay in COVID-19 vaccines will impact negatively on Africa. Let's take a listen.
Any delay in our vaccination is going to cost us not just lives, but our economies. I mean, because if you take the case of South Africa, if the projection or the trends we are seeing are maintained, then South Africa would naturally go through a third wave, and that will require other drastic measures that will restrict the movement of people, restrict the tourist industry, will restrict so many things in economic development. So that continues to impact our economy and, of course, life saved. Vaccines are the most potent tool for our economic recovery, period. I don't know how else to put it there. I mean, if we want to recover our economies, we have to invest in vaccines, and at scale and at speed. I've always said there are three things we need to do on the continent to come out of this. One is fairness in vaccine distribution. Second is the speed of vaccination, and third is the scale of vaccination.
Professor Manji, now as a follow-up to our first question, some governments in Africa are claiming that the vaccination programs are targeting citizens regardless of their social background. Now, do you agree?
It's shocking to see how many of those middle-class people have actually had access to the vaccines, whereas those most in need, the most vulnerable, those who work in hospitals, those who do the cleaning, those who are exposed to on a daily basis in occupations which put them at highest risk, they're the ones who are least able to get access to vaccines.
Now, the need to contain the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the African Union work on silencing the guns, an ambitious goal to end conflicts in Africa by 2020. Now, the organization has extended this project's deadline by 10 years. African Union High Representative for Silencing the Guns, Ambassador Namtane Lamamara, elaborates here on the importance of the project.
The African leaders have come to realize that very little of their ambitious project for Africa could be actually accomplished if they don't succeed in silencing the guns.
Let's now bring in Professor Munene. Now, silencing the guns, a slogan of a project that targets silencing of all illegal weapons in Africa, could not be realized by the African Union by the end of 2020 as envisaged. Now, what was the reason for the failure to meet the deadline?
Thank you very much. There are, I think, three reasons that can be given. In each of the states, particularly those that have perpetual friction, the divisions and the feuds among various factions. Second, the African Union as a body does not have the capacity to intervene properly and stop some of the things. Third, the encouragement and the conflict entrepreneurs from outside the continent to ensure that the fighting continues because it makes it easy for them to extract the wealth that they need to do that by sponsoring some of the factions.
The formation of the African Union was precisely aimed at finding African solutions for African problems. The AU's institutions, powers, and objectives were meant to bring about fundamental shifts away from the constraints imposed on actions under the Organization of African Unity Charter.
The newly elected African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Bankole Adoye, says going forward, there will be more focus on preventing conflicts.
Over the years, we have invested so much in responding to conflicts without investing our tools, our energy, our time in conflict prevention. I believe that will be the African Union, the world will be a better place for us if we promote preventive diplomacy as was championed by one of Africa's greatest sons in the past, Dr. Boutros Ghali, who also became UN Secretary General. He spoke about the emphasis on preventive diplomacy. So one of the things I'll be doing under my commissionership is to devote more energy into early warning, into preventive diplomacy, and engaging in mediation at the highest level.
Now, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we shall continue our discussion by looking at the African Continental Free Trade Area. So stay with us.
Africa Day 2021.
The African Continental Free Trade Area began operating on the 1st of January 2021 and is expected to boost African commerce, especially after the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The African Union Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Ambassador Albert Muchanga, says the journey towards the African Continental Free Trade Area has been long.
It has been a long journey, difficult and long, but we had visionaries. When we created the Organization of African Unit in 1963, President Nkurumah of Ghana made a clarion call: Africa must unite.
Back to you, Professor Munene. Now, where do you see the African Continental Free Trade Area in the next 5 years?
So there are moves to remove or minimize border obstacles so that people and goods and services can move freely from one to the other. And that is a process, a work in progress. So in the next 5 years, I see it very big, having expanded to almost every country on the continent. Right now, it does not embrace as much. And in the way things are going, having these interlinkages in terms of communications, infrastructure, the more the infrastructure between and amongst the countries, the more the inter-African trade is likely to increase. So in the next 5 years, it will be expanded to a reasonable level that many countries will feel good about it.
Thank you, Professor Munene, for that positive outlook.
The African Continental Free Trade Area is supposed to provide significant opportunity for small businesses. A Ugandan trader explains here the challenges she faces in cross-border trade.
I'm selling clothes. I bought them from South Africa, Dar es Salaam, Nairobi. When I'm bringing my goods back, we have problems because they ask us to pay. But if you don't want to pay, they take your goods. When you don't have all the money, you bribe.
Do you think common people in Africa will benefit from African Continental Free Trade Area? In other words, will the benefits trickle down?
For the vast majority of people, I'm afraid this is not going to be something good. If you look at Africa in terms of food, something like 75 to 80% of food in Africa is produced by small-scale farmers. But it isn't, it isn't they who are going to benefit from this. It's going to be those who own these large industrial, agricultural, and indeed the mining companies. They're the ones who are going to be the ones who are going to benefit from this. It allows the transnationals to move across different borders for free. It allows the rich to make to trade, but does I fear very little for farmers or for those who are dispossessed of their land or are unemployed.
One of the major challenges facing Africa today is the presence of foreign military bases, especially those established by Western countries with a history of colonialism and exploitation. The U.S. and France are at the forefront of conducting and establishing military bases in Africa. The Western military bases are unpopular in Africa, with many citizens saying they believe these bases are a source of insecurity. A Ghanaian woman explains here on why she opposes U.S. military presence in her country.
I'm a mother, and we know what these Americans do. We know that these Americans has a lot of enemies, and by coming to settle their base here, we are not safe. That's the reason why I have to join this campaign, to create awareness.
Now, recently, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari said that the United States should consider moving its military headquarters overseeing Africa to the continent from Germany to better tackle what he called growing violence in the region. Now, Buhari's remarks have been sharply criticized by many inside and outside Nigeria. Professor Monene, is it in the interest of African countries to have foreign military bases dotted around the continent?
It may not be in their long-run interest or in the African interest to have all these bases, competing bases, not just because they're competing bases of various powerful countries trying to show their might as they perceptibly protect their perceived interest, geostrategic interest in using Africa as the place or the base for that purpose. So it will have to come from within the African countries in collaboration with their regional bodies and the African Union to agree that the bases are not helpful to individual countries and to the African continent as a whole.
Thank you for that insight, Professor Monene.
African Union Agenda 2063, a shared strategic framework for inclusive growth and sustainable development, was adopted in January of 2015 by the 24th African Union Assembly of Heads of State and Government. It is basically a blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. Is the African Union on track to achieve the objectives of Agenda 2063, which aims to transform the continent into a major global power?
The potential is there, but it is far from being realized. And in part because of the reasons we've given for the other answers. The divisions within, the external forces that would like to keep the African continent divided and fighting. And then when you come to the High Command, the African High Command, we have some organizations that have some military aspects, but not very strong because they are also reliant on external, extracontinental forces.
This year, President Cyril Ramaphosa participated in a webinar marking the Africa Day. The webinar was organized by the Prime Minister of Jamaica under the theme, A Destiny of Peace, Prosperity, Strength, and Unity. Ramaphosa had this to say on the importance of Africa Day, which brings together people of African descent from across the world.
Today we celebrate the ties that bind us together. Ties that no ocean, be it the Atlantic Ocean or any other, no slave trader, no war, and no pandemic can tear asunder.
Professor Manji, you have the closing comments in our show today. Now, is Africa Day given the attention it deserves in Africa?
But you see, there are two different kinds of Pan-Africanism. The African Union represents the Pan-Africanism of an elite, of the oligarchs of our continent. Whereas on the ground, there are people who are organizing and connecting citizens to citizens. And it's that kind of connection between citizens and those who are perhaps the most disenfranchised, what Fanon called the wretched of the earth, who are the ones who can benefit most from that connection Pan-African-wise.
Well, thanks a lot, Professor Firoz Manji of the Raja Press, for your incisive analysis. Unfortunately, our time is up for today. Now, welcome to this segment of our program, which brings you interesting news from different parts of Africa. Now, today we are going to Nigeria, where recently an athlete who was 8 months pregnant clinched a Taekwondo gold medal at the country's National Sports Festival. We've talked to her days after the event. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself, some background about your sporting career.
Good afternoon. My name is Mrs. Idris Aminat Matepo. I'm 26 years old, graduate of University of Lagos, studied human kinetics and health education. My sporting career started when I was pretty young. My dad is a taekwondo coach, and taekwondo has been a family thing. You know, he introduced taekwondo to us, and he encouraged us to train. So growing up, I got very fond of training. I love to train. I'm always happy when I have to go for training. So it's been like that up till this moment. So I'll say basically taekwondo it's in the family. So that's why I've been on track. Yeah.
Okay, Aminat, how is your experience as a hijabi woman doing professional sports?
Yeah, as an hijabi, using hijab and participating in professional sports, it's been very interesting for me personally, because one of the reasons why I'm still in sports, why I'm still participating actively, is because taekwondo allows the use of hijab globally, international, anywhere you want to go, as far as you want to go, taekwondo allows the use of hijab. So for me personally, it's always interesting. I'm always happy. I'm representing Islam. You know, I'm out there. I'm having fun. I'm doing what I like, and I'm still properly dressed. Not just my hijab. You know, the taekwondo outfit itself is really modest. It's covered. It's big. It's not tight. You know, so it allows me to be very confident and free to do whatever I have to do. So for me, it's one of the most interesting parts of being an athlete, that I have to use my hijab. It doesn't deprive me.
Now, there was mixed reaction after you attended the competition while 8 months pregnant. Now, how do you feel about yourself? Why did you decide to take part in the competition, and weren't you worried about the health of your unborn child?
You know, people are entitled to their opinion. You can say whatever you want to say. No one is going to hold that against you. So what is most important is the fact that my husband, my family members, you know, they gave their consent. You can go ahead. That's one. Secondly, I have been certified by medical professionals that, okay, you are physically fit. You can go ahead, because it's something I have been doing before I got married, before I got pregnant. You know, my body is already used to it. It's something I've been doing, I've been practicing. So when I got pregnant, I started training. It doesn't feel different. Then we had to seek permission from the federation as well, Nigerian Taekwondo Federation, just to be sure that there is no rule against a pregnant woman participating at the event. So, and we were assured that the World Taekwondo Federation has no conduct against it. So we had no reason to be worried. As far as I am okay, there was no reason to fear. I believe in God that my baby and I will be fine. That's how we decided to move ahead.
Well, by the way, this interview was conducted while she was pregnant, and now the good news is that Aminat Idris has already given birth to a bouncing baby girl. Well, congratulations, Aminat, for the little angel, and God bless you all. And that wraps it up for this week's edition of Africa Today. Thanks a lot for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the show. It will be great hearing from you, so send us your comments through our social media handle. Goodbye for now.